On a time, in a small village nestled between green hills, there lived a kind old woman named Granny Rose. Granny Rose was known for her amazing sewing skills. She could fix anything with her magic needle and thread, whether it was a torn shirt, a ripped pillow, or even a stuffed animal missing an arm. One day, a little boy named Timmy came running to Granny Rose with a worried look on his face. He was holding his favorite cloak, which had a large tear down the middle. The cloak had been a gift from his grandfather, and Timmy wore it every day. But while playing in the forest, Timmy had caught the cloak on a thorny bush, and now it was ruined. "Granny Rose, can you please fix my cloak?" Timmy asked, his voice trembling. Granny Rose smiled warmly. "Of course, my dear, but let me tell you something important. A stitch in time saves 9. Timmy looked puzzled. "What does that mean, Granny?" "It means that if you fix a small problem right away, it will save you from having a bigger problem later," Granny Rose explained. "If you had fixed that little snag in your cloak when it first appeared, this tear wouldn't have grown so large." Timmy nodded, understanding now. He watched as Granny Rose took out her magic needle and began to sew. With each careful stitch, the cloak started to look whole again. The needle glowed softly, and Timmy could see that the tear was disappearing as if by magic. In no time, the cloak was as good as new. Timmy was overjoyed and thanked Granny Rose, but he also remembered her words. From that day on, Timmy paid close attention to his belongings. Whenever he noticed a loose thread or a small rip, he fixed it right away. And do you know what? He never had another big tear in his cloak again. And so, Timmy learned that taking care of little problems early could save him from bigger troubles later on. In the heart of the jungle lived a young lion named Leo. Unlike the other lions, Leo had a problem. He couldn't roar. Every time he tried, only a tiny squeak came out. The other animals would chuckle and say, "A lion that can't roar? How strange." Leo felt embarrassed and tried to avoid roaring in front of anyone. He practiced every day, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't roar like the other lions. He felt sad and wondered if he would ever be a true lion without a mighty roar. One day, while wandering through the jungle, Leo heard a cry for help. He rushed to the sound and found a group of monkeys trapped in a net. The monkeys were scared, and no other animals dared to help because the hunters who set the trap were nearby. Leo knew he had to do something, but what could he do without a roar to scare the hunters away? Then he had an idea. Instead of roaring, he used his gentle voice to comfort the monkeys. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'll help you." With his strong claws, Leo carefully cut through the net and freed the monkeys. They were so grateful that they gave Leo the biggest hugs. The noise of the escape attracted the hunters, but when they saw Leo standing there, they ran away in fear, not knowing if he would roar or not. The other animals heard about Leo's bravery. They realized that being a lion wasn't just about having a loud roar, it was about having courage and kindness, too. From that day on, Leo was no longer embarrassed by his quiet voice. He knew that even without a roar, he was a true lion. And as for his roar, it eventually came, not through force, but through confidence. When Leo finally roared, it echoed through the jungle, not as a sound of power, but as a symbol of his brave heart. Sunny Meadow, there lived 2 little bunnies named Benny and Bella. Benny was a smart bunny who loved to think and solve puzzles. Bella was a playful bunny who loved to hop and explore. They were the best of friends and did everything together. One day, while playing near a big tree, Benny and Bella found a huge, heavy carrot stuck in the ground. It was the biggest carrot they had ever seen. "Wow," said Bella, hopping around excitedly. "Let's pull it out and have a big carrot feast." Benny grabbed the carrot with his paws and pulled as hard as he could, but no matter how hard he pulled, the carrot wouldn't budge. "It's too heavy," Benny said, feeling a bit sad. "I'll help," said Bella, hopping over to Benny. She grabbed the carrot too, and together they pulled with all their might. But still, the carrot stayed stuck in the ground. "What are we going to do?" asked Bella, her ears drooping. "We can't get the carrot out." Benny thought for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "Let's pull together at the same time. 2 heads are better than 1. So Benny and Bella both took a deep breath, grabbed the carrot tight, and pulled together. They pulled, and suddenly the big carrot popped right out of the ground. "We did it!" they cheered, laughing and jumping around with joy. Benny and Bella took the big carrot back to their home and shared it with all their bunny friends. Everyone was so happy, and Benny and Bella learned that when they worked together they could do anything, even solve big problems like pulling out a giant carrot. And from that day on, whenever they faced a big problem, Benny and Bella would always remember 2 heads are better than 1. In a small village surrounded by thick forests and tall mountains, there lived a clever young girl named Mia. Mia was known for her curiosity and bravery. She loved exploring the woods and finding new paths that no one else had discovered. One afternoon, while wandering through the forest, Mia came across a narrow, rickety bridge that stretched across a deep ravine. The bridge looked old, but it seemed like a shortcut to the other side of the forest, where a beautiful meadow full of flowers lay. "Wow! This bridge will get me to the meadow so much faster," Mia thought excitedly. She was just about to step onto the bridge when she remembered something her grandmother had once told her. "Mia, always be careful and think before you act. Sometimes things aren't as safe as they seem." Mia paused and decided to take a closer look at the bridge. She noticed that some of the wooden planks were cracked, and the ropes holding the bridge together were frayed and worn out. She realized that if she had stepped onto the bridge without checking, it might have broken under her weight, and she could have fallen into the ravine below. Instead of risking the dangerous bridge, Mia took the longer path through the forest. It took more time, but she arrived safely at the meadow, where she spent the rest of the day playing and picking flowers. As Mia sat in the meadow, she thought about how lucky she was to have listened to her grandmother's advice. She knew that from now on she would always take a moment to think and look carefully before making decisions. Mia returned home that evening, her basket full of flowers and her heart full of gratitude for the lesson she had learned. Look before you leap. The Brave Squirrel and the Helpful Bird. In a colorful forest, filled with tall trees and singing streams, there lived a brave little squirrel named Sammy and a kind bird named Bella. Sammy was always busy gathering acorns and running up and down the trees, while Bella flew above, singing beautiful songs that everyone in the forest loved to hear. One autumn day, a strong wind began to blow through the forest. The wind was so fierce that it knocked down branches, leaves, and even some of Sammy's precious acorns. Sammy rushed to gather his acorns before the wind could carry them away. Suddenly, Sammy lost his balance and fell into a deep hole hidden beneath the leaves. "Help!" Sammy squeaked, trying to climb out, but the walls of the hole were slippery, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape. Up in the sky, Bella heard Sammy's cries. She flew down quickly and spotted her friend trapped below. "Hold on, Sammy! I'm coming to help!" she chirped. Bella knew she wasn't strong enough to pull Sammy out by herself, so she had an idea. She flew to a nearby tree and began gathering sticks and vines. Using her cleverness, Bella built a rope out of the vines and dropped one end into the hole. "Grab on, Sammy!" Bella called. Sammy grabbed the vine with his tiny paws, and with Bella flapping her wings and pulling as hard as she could, Sammy was soon out of the hole. He was dirty and tired, but safe and sound. "Thank you, Bella," Sammy said, hugging his friend. "I didn't know how I would get out without you." Bella smiled. "That's what friends are for, Sammy. You would have done the same for me." From that day on, Sammy and Bella became closer than ever, knowing that true friends always look out for each other in times of trouble. The best mistake ever. Once upon a time, in a colorful little town, there lived a young boy named Leo. Leo loved to try new things, but he was afraid of making mistakes. He would always watch his friends paint, build sand castles, and ride their bikes. But whenever he wanted to join, the fear of doing something wrong would stop him. One sunny afternoon, Leo's friend Maya invited him to paint a picture at the park. "Come on, Leo. It'll be fun," she said. Leo hesitated. "What if I mess up? What if my painting isn't good?" he worried. Maya smiled and said, "Mistakes are proof that you are trying. Without mistakes, we wouldn't learn new things." Encouraged, Leo picked up a paintbrush and began painting. At first, his hand trembled, and the colors splashed in places he didn't intend. He accidentally painted a blue tree instead of a green one. His sun had too many rays, and his bird looked like a flying fish. But something magical happened. As Leo painted, he started to enjoy the process. He giggled at his silly tree and smiled at his funny bird. And before he knew it, his painting looked unique and full of life. Maya looked at Leo's painting and said, "It's beautiful. Your mistakes made it special." Leo beamed. He realized that the little accidents in his painting weren't failures. They were part of what made his picture different and amazing. From that day on, Leo never worried about making mistakes again. He knew that every mistake was just another step toward something great. The Kind Tortoise and the Ant. In a peaceful meadow lived Tessa, a wise and kind tortoise. Tessa was slow, but she always helped those in need. One warm afternoon, as she was walking near a river, she noticed a tiny ant struggling to carry a large leaf. Tessa stopped and asked, "Do you need help, little friend?" The ant, named Andy, looked up. "I would love some help, but you're so big and I'm so small. How could you possibly help me?" Tessa smiled. "Sometimes it's not about size. It's about offering what you can." With her gentle nudge, Tessa helped push the leaf to Andy's home. Grateful, Andy thanked her. "I'll never forget your kindness, Tessa." A few days later, a big storm came to the meadow. Tessa, who was out exploring, found herself caught in the rain. The muddy ground made it hard for her to move, and she became stuck. Just then, Andy and a group of ants appeared. "Don't worry, Tessa. We're here to help." Together, the ants worked as a team, clearing the mud and freeing Tessa. Tessa was amazed. "Thank you, Andy. I never thought someone as small as you could help me." Andy smiled. "Just like you said, Tessa. Kindness isn't about size. It's about helping whenever we can." The Fox Who Learned to Share. Freddie the Fox lived in a beautiful forest filled with trees, berries, and plenty of food. Freddie loved collecting things, especially delicious fruits like berries, apples, and nuts. But Freddie had one problem. He never liked sharing. One day, while Freddie was gathering food, he saw his friend, Benny the Rabbit, looking sad. "What's wrong, Benny?" Freddie asked. "I couldn't find enough food today, and I'm so hungry," Benny replied. Freddie looked at his large pile of berries, but thought, "I worked hard for these. Why should I share?" So Freddie simply said, "Sorry, Benny. I don't have enough to share." Benny hopped away sadly, and Freddie continued to gather more food. The next day, however, something unexpected happened. As Freddie was crossing a small stream, he slipped, and all the food he had collected floated away. Now, Freddie had no food and was very hungry. Feeling sad, Freddie wandered through the forest until he came across Benny, who was happily munching on some carrots. Benny noticed Freddie and said, "You look hungry, Freddie. Would you like to share some carrots with me?" Freddie was surprised. "But I didn't share with you yesterday?" Benny smiled. "That's okay. We all need help sometimes." Freddie felt grateful as he sat down to eat with Benny. From that day on, Freddie learned the joy of sharing and always made sure to help his friends. The Ant and the Grasshopper. In a lively meadow, there lived an ant named Annie and a grasshopper named Greg. Annie was a hard-working ant who spent her days collecting food and preparing for the winter. Greg, on the other hand, loved to sing and dance all day long. One sunny afternoon, Greg saw Annie working diligently and asked, "Why don't you join me and have some fun? There's plenty of time before winter." Annie shook her head. "I need to prepare for the colder months. There won't be food available when it gets cold." Greg laughed. "Oh, don't worry about it. You're just being too serious. Come dance with me." Annie smiled but continued working. "Maybe another time." As the days passed, the weather grew colder and food became scarce. Greg, who had spent his time singing and dancing, found himself hungry and cold. He had no food stored for the winter and didn't know what to do. Desperate, Greg remembered Annie's advice and went to her home. "Annie, I'm really sorry I didn't listen to you. Can you help me?" Annie welcomed Greg inside and shared some of her food. "Of course, Greg. It's important to work hard and prepare, but it's also important to help friends in need." Greg thanked Annie and learned a valuable lesson. From then on, he balanced his time between work and play and always made sure to prepare for the future. Lily's Magical Adventure. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Lily who loved to explore. One day, while playing in her garden, she found a shiny golden key hidden under a flower. What could this key open? Lily wondered. She looked around and saw a small wooden door hidden in the bushes. Curious, she inserted the key into the door. To her surprise, the door opened, revealing a magical forest full of talking animals and glowing flowers. A friendly rabbit named Oliver hopped over to greet her. "Welcome, Lily." "You've unlocked the door to the enchanted forest," he said. Lily was amazed. She spent the day playing with the animals, dancing with butterflies, and learning how to talk to the flowers. As the sun began to set, Oliver said, "You can come back whenever you want. Just use your golden key." With a big smile, Lily promised she would return. She hurried home, excited to tell her parents about her magical adventure, knowing that the enchanted forest would always be there waiting for her next visit. The Brave Little Sailor. Once upon a time, in a seaside village, lived a boy named Oliver. His house overlooked the sparkling blue ocean, and every day he watched ships sail out to sea. Oliver dreamed of being a sailor like his father, Captain William, who commanded the largest ship in the village, the Wind Whisperer. Captain William was famous for his bravery, having sailed through fierce storms and dangerous waters. But what Oliver admired most was his father's calmness, even in the toughest situations. "Dad, can I join you on your next voyage?" Oliver asked one day. His father smiled and said, "One day, son. But remember, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." Oliver didn't quite understand. The sea always seemed calm and peaceful to him, perfect for adventure. Why did anyone need skill when the ocean looked so welcoming? One evening, Captain William announced, "Tomorrow we sail for Starfish Island. And Oliver, You'll join us." Oliver's heart soared with excitement. He packed his bag and dreamed of island adventures and treasure hunts. The next morning, they set sail. The sea was calm, the sky blue, and the crew lively. Oliver loved every moment. He even steered the ship for a bit, feeling like a real sailor. But one evening, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The wind picked up, and soon the sea was churning with tall, crashing waves. Captain William gave orders to prepare for the storm. Oliver's excitement turned to nervousness as the once gentle sea transformed into a roaring beast. As the storm raged, the ship rocked violently, and Oliver clung to the railing. "Dad, what do we do?" he shouted. Captain William, calm as ever, replied, "We do what sailors do, Oliver." We face the storm. Remember, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. With his father's words in mind, Oliver watched the crew work together to steer the ship through the storm. It was tough, but they remained focused and brave. Slowly the storm began to ease, and by morning, the sea was calm again. Oliver stood at the bow, gazing at the now peaceful ocean. He felt proud. He had faced his first storm and understood what it truly meant to be a sailor. His father joined him and said, "You did well, Oliver. You faced the storm and came through stronger." From that day on, Oliver was no longer just a boy who dreamed of the sea. He was a sailor, ready for any adventure the ocean might bring, knowing that even the roughest storms made him stronger. Max and the Magic Paintbrush. Max was a boy who loved to draw. He spent hours each day sketching pictures of animals, trees, and colorful landscapes. One day, while walking home from school, Max found an old, dusty paintbrush lying by the road. Curious, he picked it up and took it home. That night, Max decided to try the paintbrush. He dipped it into some paint and began to draw a big, bright sun on a piece of paper. But something amazing happened. The sun on the paper started to glow. Then, it lifted off the page and floated into the air, shining just like the real sun. Max was amazed. "This is a magic paintbrush," he exclaimed. Excited, he painted a tree, and right before his eyes, the tree grew tall and strong, with green leaves rustling in the breeze. Max painted animals, rivers, and flowers, all of them coming to life around him. Soon, his room was a magical jungle full of life and color. But then Max had an idea. "What if I use this paintbrush to help people?" he thought. So the next day, Max went to the town square and started painting. He painted a beautiful garden for the elderly to relax in, playful animals for the kids, and a sparkling fountain for everyone to enjoy. The townspeople were amazed and thankful, and Max felt happy knowing his magic paintbrush could bring joy to others. The brave little bumblebee. In a bright and colorful meadow lived a small bumblebee named Buzz. Buzz was the smallest bee in his hive, and he always felt nervous about flying too far from home. The other bees would fly off to gather nectar from distant flowers, but Buzz preferred to stay close to the hive. One sunny morning, the queen bee called for all the bees. "We need to find nectar from the rare bluebell flowers deep in the forest," she said. "Who will be brave enough to go?" Buzz wanted to help, but the forest seemed so far away. Just as Buzz was about to step back, his friend Daisy, a wise old butterfly, fluttered by and said, "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, Buzz. It means you try even when you are." Inspired by Daisy's words, Buzz raised his little wings and volunteered. "I'll go, Your Majesty." Buzz flew high and low, passing over meadows and streams until he reached the forest. It was dark and full of tall trees, but Buzz remembered Daisy's advice and kept going. Soon, he spotted the rare bluebell flowers, their petals shining in the sunlight. Buzz gathered the nectar and hurried back to the hive. The queen bee was delighted, and all the bees cheered for Buzz. "You may be small, but your bravery is mighty," the queen said. From that day on, Buzz wasn't afraid of exploring new places. He knew that as long as he believed in himself, he could do anything. The Adventures of Timmy the Turtle. Timmy was a little turtle who lived in a peaceful pond, surrounded by tall trees and colorful flowers. Timmy loved his home, but he had one big wish. He wanted to go on an adventure and see the world beyond the pond. One sunny morning, Timmy woke up feeling extra brave. "Today's the day," he said. He waved goodbye to his friends, the frogs and fish, and started his journey. As Timmy walked through the forest, he came across a wise old owl sitting on a tree branch. "Where are you going, little turtle?" asked the owl. "I want to go on an adventure and see the world," Timmy replied excitedly. The owl smiled. "Adventure is wonderful, but remember, the journey can be full of surprises. Be brave and keep going." Timmy thanked the owl and continued on his way. Soon he came to a wide, flowing river. "How am I going to cross this?" he wondered. Just then, a friendly beaver popped up from the water. "Need help, little turtle?" asked the beaver. Timmy nodded. With a few quick chomps, the beaver chewed down some branches and built a sturdy raft. "Hop on," the beaver said. Timmy climbed onto the raft, and together they floated across the river. "Thank you, Mr. Beaver," Timmy said as he reached the other side. The forest on the other side of the river was different, full of tall mountains and strange creatures. Timmy kept walking until he saw a big, beautiful rainbow stretching across the sky. He followed the rainbow and found a hidden valley filled with sparkling streams and magical creatures like unicorns and talking butterflies. Timmy spent the day exploring the magical valley and making new friends. As the sun began to set, he realized it was time to go home. With the help of his new friends, he found his way back to the pond. When Timmy returned, all his friends were waiting for him. "How was your adventure?" asked the frogs. "It was amazing," Timmy said. "I saw rivers, mountains, and even a magical valley. But you know what? No matter where I go, home is the best place of all." And from that day on, Timmy knew that while adventure was fun, there was always a special place waiting for him at the pond. The Curious Kitten and the Wishing Star. Once upon a time, there was a tiny, curious kitten named Whiskers. Whiskers loved to explore the world around her, from the soft grass in the garden to the tall trees in the forest nearby. But there was one thing Whiskers loved most of all: watching the stars at night. One evening, as Whiskers gazed up at the sky, she saw a bright star twinkle and then shoot across the sky. It was a shooting star. Excited, Whiskers closed her eyes and made a wish. "I wish I could visit the stars," she whispered. To her surprise, the star heard her. A soft voice filled the air. "Your wish is granted, little one." Suddenly, Whiskers felt herself being lifted off the ground. She floated higher and higher, past the trees, past the clouds, and all the way up to the sparkling stars. She landed gently on a fluffy cloud, where a friendly star named Sparkle greeted her. "Welcome to the starry sky," Sparkle said. "Here, every wish comes true." Whiskers looked around in awe. She saw stars dancing, moonbeams playing tag, and even a comet zooming by. Sparkle took her on a tour of the sky, showing her the constellations and the Milky Way. "Can I stay here forever?" Whiskers asked. Sparkle smiled. "You belong on Earth, little kitten, but you can always visit us by watching the stars and making a wish." With that, Whiskers was gently floated back to her cozy bed on Earth. From that night on, Whiskers knew she had special friends in the sky. And every evening she'd look up at the stars and remember her magical adventure.